Klein was a very tough, hard, bad guy.
Let's say that I'm proficient in self-defense and that kind of stuff.
The first time I ever saw Mike Klein, the first time I ever saw, it was a picture of him holding up two severed heads. He was in his uniform, so, he was one of those, crazy Israeli, army guys.
The story I heard was Klein told Suge he was going to cut him up in little pieces and put him in dumpsters all around the city.
We've all heard about Eazy-E's ties to the Crips and even his connections with some heavy hitters in the Mexican circles, but there's another wild layer to his story that doesn't get talked about enough. Word is, Eazy had links to the Israeli Special Forces. Yeah, those guys, the kind you don't need to introduce because everyone already knows they don't play.
Mike Klein was a very tough, hard, bad guy.
So when Suge Knight and his goons tried to press Eazy, thinking they could strong-arm him like they did others, they quickly realized they were messing with someone who had even crazier people in his corner.
We reached an understanding that nobody was coming to the office without an appointment.
Let's dive in. When Eazy-E brought in Jerry Heller to help co-manage Ruthless Records, it seemed like a smart business move at first, but that decision ended up stirring up a lot of tension instead. Instead of bringing peace and structure, Heller's presence actually made things worse, and the artists under the label weren't feeling him at all.
You can ask any artist on Ruthless Records if they're happy. I bet you they say no.
Ice Cube eventually bounced. Not long after that, Dr. Dre wanted out too. And who was waiting right there in the shadows, ready to make a move? Suge Knight. Suge had been eyeing Dre for a minute, knowing Dre was the talent that could launch his own empire. And once Dre wanted out of Ruthless, Suge wasted no time getting involved.
Suge had started really finessing Dre when we were still with Ruthless. He was really plotting. He was seeing us before we were seeing him.
But the way he went about it wasn't exactly business as usual. Since Suge couldn't get to Eazy, he went after the people around Eazy. Suge and his crew rolled up on Jerry Heller, demanding Dre's contract. And according to Mob James, who was part of Suge's circle back then, Jerry was literally frozen with fear, stuck in his seat like he saw a ghost. That wasn't the end of it either.
So, but Jerry's in the room with this big Suge Knight guy.
Just them two. Suge got a check out of him, and he got Dre. We walked out of there, and he was sitting at his desk where Suge left him, walked out of there. I don't think Suge had to put his hands on him or nothing. He was that scared.
In fact, after the contract incident, Jerry's house got broken into. A few things were stolen, but the real kicker was that someone spray-painted a threatening message on his mirror. There was no solid proof it was Suge, but Jerry had no doubt in his mind who was behind it.
I mean, your house was vandalized. Your life was threatened.
Yeah. Right.
What were some of the incidents that, I mean, didn't you come home one time and find out that your house was broken into?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff missing, and on the wall was spray painted, on the mirror in one of the bedrooms was spray painted, "Payback for Jerry," or "Payback Jerry." One of those things. I always felt that Suge had something to do with it.
From that point on, Jerry was spooked. Just hearing Suge's name was enough to make him lose it. Things at Ruthless were getting shaky, and the pressure from Suge wasn't letting up. That's when Eazy and Jerry decided to bring in some serious backup. They hired a man named Mike Klein, a former Israeli Special Forces guy, to handle security.
Jerry's response was to hire an ex-Israeli Special Forces dude named Klein, who helped organize the defense against Suge.
And this wasn't your regular bodyguard. Klein was on a whole different level. According to Jerry's cousin, Gary Ballin, the first time he ever saw Klein was in a photo where he was holding up two severed heads. Klein had a crew of equally intense dudes working under him, and they immediately became Ruthless Records' new security team.
The first time I ever saw Mike Klein, it was a picture of him holding up two severed heads. He was in his uniform, so, he was one of those, crazy Israeli, army guys.
Eazy loved Klein. He liked that Rambo, no-nonsense energy Klein brought to the table. He was a beast when it came to hand-to-hand combat, and he was a marksman with a gun. One of Eazy's other bodyguards, a guy named Animal, said he didn't think much of Klein at first, but that changed real fast.
Then we met Mike Klein, he was like, head of the security. for Ruthless and stuff, man. You know, I was checking him out and stuff like, man, this guy don't look like he's too much of nothing, man. But boy, was I wrong.
Animal said Klein never missed a bullseye at the range and always had this eerie smile on his face, even when things got serious, which somehow made him even scarier.
He can box, he can fight, he can shoot a target. You know, they go like bang, 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 you know, and they're like, hit the bullseye. Mike Klein go bang, 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 bang. Bullseye.
Apparently, Klein even confronted Suge directly. Word is he told Suge straight up that if he ever came back around uninvited, he'd leave in a box. Another version of the story says Klein threatened to chop Suge up and dump him in dumpsters all over the city. Either way, the message was clear. Suge wasn't welcome.
The story I heard was Klein told Suge he was going to cut him up in little pieces and put him in dumpsters all around the city.
Once Klein and his crew were on board, Suge's grip started slipping. Now, before Klein came in, Eazy already had serious muscle around him, like the Samoan twin brothers Jacob and John Tovio. These guys weren't just security, they were loyal and dangerous. They were known in the streets and he didn't play. They were the ones who took Eazy to the hospital when he got sick in '95 and later served as pallbearers at his funeral. That tells you how close they were. So yeah, Suge had no real way in. Eazy's defenses were too tight. That's when Suge resorted to dirty tactics. The rumor is he threatened Eazy using the one thing he knew would get to him, his mother. And it worked. That's what finally pushed Eazy to let go of Dre's contract. But here's the twist. Some say it was Jerry Heller who gave Suge the address to Eazy's mom in the first place, probably during one of the times he was panicking and trying to get Suge off his back. So how did all this even start? Tracing it back, the whole thing really kicked off when Dr. Dre and Eazy-E teamed up to form NWA back in the 80s. They had already built a solid crew and were making noise all over Compton, but they needed someone to handle the business side of things. That's when Eazy-E, who had stacked up a serious amount of cash from the drug game, decided to take a big risk. Eazy had a connection with Alonzo Williams, a guy who ran a popular spot called Eve After Dark, one of Eazy's regular hangouts. Funny enough, Dre had actually been a DJ under Alonzo's group World Class Wreckin' Crew before NWA was even a thing. That group was already under the management of Jerry Heller, and they were doing pretty well at the time. So Eazy made his move. He used his ties with Alonzo to set up a meeting, and once they worked out the details, Heller was officially in the picture. That moment changed everything. Ruthless Records got a serious boost, but it also set the stage for a whole lot of drama. As soon as Heller started managing NWA, cracks started to show. The first to call it out was Arabian Prince. He felt like something wasn't adding up. Money wasn't flowing the way it should, and when he voiced his concerns, nobody listened. Eventually, he had enough. He walked away and never looked back. The rest of the crew kept pushing, dropping hits, selling out shows, living the dream. But then, Ice Cube started noticing the same thing. He realized Arabian Prince might have been onto something. The money wasn't matching the success, and things just weren't adding up. Then came the final straw. Heller put together a contract and offered each member $75,000 check. The rest of the group went along with it, but not Ice Cube. He knew his worth and that money wasn't cutting it. Over the years, Cube has made it clear in interviews that Heller was the root of all the problems within NWA.
The reason that we were separated was because I felt that the person that I'm talking about on the record separated us. And
Your manager.
Yeah.
He didn't just get suspicious overnight, though. According to Cube, it was their former publicist, who later became his manager, that tipped him off about Jerry's shady history. Once that seed was planted, Cube started paying close attention.
But before she was my manager, she was like, as soon as she saw Jerry Heller, she was like,
she already knew.
Do y'all know this guy? Do you know who this dude is? And I'm like, nope, who is he? So she would give me the game on like, did y'all sign a contract with him? I'm like, nah. Cause she knew his history. I was like, you know, this is a dude I need to watch then, you know, cause if I don't even really know her that good. And if she's saying to watch him, I don't know none of these people. So I'm watching everybody.
And sure enough, when Cube asked to see his contract before signing, Jerry refused. That was all the confirmation Cube needed. He wasn't about to get played, so he made the tough decision to leave NWA.
I was just mad at that dude because he wouldn't give me my contract. You know, I just wanted, let me see it. Let me take it to my people. I don't know, I can't give it to you. You can sign it, but I can't give it to you. So, That was shady.
And he was heated, not just at Jerry, but at Eazy too. He felt betrayed that Eazy was letting Jerry call all the shots without considering how it was affecting the group.
A little mad at E because I felt E wasn't taking the right side. You know, I felt E
he was kind of under his
doing enough to keep me in the group. You know, basically he was like, yo, you know, you can go out and be a flop like Arabian Prince. You know, that was his exact quotes, you know, and I was like, damn, that ain't gonna happen, bruh.
Jerry even had the nerve to mock Cube in a little skit about contract negotiations, but that backfired in the worst way. Ice Cube clapped back with No Vaseline, one of the most brutal diss tracks in hip-hop history.
Cube, No Vaseline is an anti-Semitic, vitriolic song where he says, how can you be an End for Life crew with a white Jew telling you what to do?
When Ice Cube left, most of the crew still didn't get what was really going on. Dre, for example, thought he was doing all right. He even signed a deal for $100K to drop 5 albums, which broke down to just $20K per album. At the time, that sounded like good money to him. But that feeling didn't last long, especially as their fame exploded across the country. Things really hit him when Straight Outta Compton dropped. The album sold a massive 3 million copies in just a few months, yet somehow nothing changed for him financially. With the kind of pull Dre had in the industry, he knew it was time to start asking questions. He brought up his concerns once, but Eazy-E and Heller brushed them aside like it was nothing. But Dre wasn't the type to just let things slide. He kept bringing it up here and there, but the answers never came. The tension kept building, and eventually the perfect opportunity to make a move presented itself. The doc, this guy who handled a lot of the writing for NWA, and even had his own solo career going. Things were looking great for him until just 5 months after dropping his debut album. Disaster struck. He got into a horrific accident that nearly cost him his life. He survived, but his voice was gone, which meant his rap career was pretty much over. After his accident, things between him and the group started to shift. His contract became a huge issue, and he found himself stuck in a bad deal with no way out. That's where Suge Knight stepped in. Back then, Suge was working as his bodyguard, and he had been by his side through all the rough times. But then Suge started digging into his contract, and that's when they realized the doc was being ripped off.
Doc, the DLC, was a friend of mine. Right. And the guy had, he had a tragic, it was an accident. So I said, well, look, one thing you can count on that, you write songs. Right. You done wrote X amount of songs for Eazy, you done wrote X amount of songs for NWA. That's worth a lot of money too. Right.
Word of this got back to Dre, and when he heard Suge was helping the doc fight for his rights, he saw his chance. Dre asked Suge to take a look at his own situation, but it was a different ballgame. Suge claimed Dre never had a contract, so instead of acting right away, they decided to play it smart and come up with a solid plan. Before making any big moves, Dre went straight to Eazy for a face-to-face conversation. He wanted answers. After all, they built NWA together, so it only felt right to handle it man-to-man. But Eazy wasn't having it. Things escalated until Dre gave him an ultimatum. He had to choose between him and Heller. And just like that, Eazy chose Heller. That told Dre everything he needed to know.
I said, listen, man, all of this going back and forth, man, either Jerry goes or I go. And he looked me in my face and said, I can't get rid of Jerry.
Dre didn't waste any more time. He demanded to have his contract terminated. He was ready to walk away from Ruthless Records for good. But just when it seemed like things could end cleanly, Eazy-E wasn't about to let him go so easily. He insisted that Dre had to fulfill his contract before he could leave. And just like that, the whole situation turned into a full-blown war. Fast forward, and at the end of it all, even Eazy-E, the one who had defended Jerry for so long, finally saw the truth. Jerry really was robbing him blind. Ice Cube had been right all along.
Jerry Heller just wasn't fair with his money and misappropriated a bunch of Eazy-E's funds, and he started feeling like Ice Cube was right.
But by the time Eazy realized it, the damage was done. He fired Jerry, but for many, that felt like nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Some even argue that Jerry was lucky. Eazy could have done far worse to him than just letting him go. On top of stealing from Eazy, Jerry had indirectly caused one of the biggest feuds in hip-hop history between Eazy and Suge. And just to top it all off, after everything he did, Jerry had the nerve to turn around and sue Eazy. So yeah, considering all that, the fact that Eazy just cut ties instead of retaliating shows he showed a lot more restraint than most would have expected. Eazy could have gone there if he wanted to. His street ties were no joke. Beyond the Israeli security muscle, Eazy had another dangerous connection most people don't talk about: the Mexican mafia. Eazy always had a deep respect for Chicano culture and was genuinely into the Latin side of hip-hop. That love for the scene led him to sign Brownside, a Chicano rap group led by the late Toker, a real street legend.
Eric was always into the Chicano rap, and well, not even Chicano rap, he was just into the Latinos, because he knew that they were his fans. He had already signed the Brownside, and then he ended up signing Kid Frost, and we ended up working on the Brownside record, you know what I mean? And you know, that was his thing. He thought everything was about the Latinos, you know what I mean?
According to Toker, the connection with Eazy happened pretty naturally. Eazy heard one of Brownside's tracks through a mutual acquaintance, and the rest was history. He reached out, they met up, and from there, it was all love.
How you hook up with Eazy-E? Because, I mean, you on Ruthless Records now.
Yeah, we plugged up with the homie 3 years ago. He heard our music through some other people. He met us. He found out we real from the streets, you know. So he wanted to with us.
But the Brownside wasn't just a rap group trying to make it big. These guys were the real deal. They were gang affiliated and had serious weight in the streets. People who knew them back then would often say that just standing in the same room with these dudes was enough to make someone's knees buckle. Their reputation was no joke.
Toker, yeah, they were on Ruthless, man, yeah. Another dude that ain't no joke. Toker was one of the few cats that I just was nervous.
He's raw as hell, basically.
He just one of them dudes. He's cool. He was super cool.
Yeah.
He's super cool. But you can tell it's a gun somewhere. It's strapped somewhere around here.
Real these guys ain't rappers. These guys are real gangsters. Because I worked with other gangster rappers. These guys are real.
That's part of what drew Eazy to them. He loved how the Latino gangs treated each other like family, loyal to the core, no questions asked. To them, your homies were your blood, and they'd go to war for you in a heartbeat. Eazy admired that ride-or-die mentality and kept them close. He knew that if things ever turned dangerous, and they often did in Eazy's world, these were the guys who would step up without hesitation. One major example of this loyalty came when there were rumors that a white supremacist group, the KKK, had allegedly put a hit out on Eazy. Now, whether or not that story was blown out of proportion, Eazy himself reportedly said that if anything had happened to him, it would have set off a full-scale riot in Compton. Why? Because the Mexican gangs would have gone to war for him. That's how deep their loyalty ran.
He said, you remember when the KKK had that hit on me? And he said, I bet if something had happened to me, the Mexicans would have been down, you know? And he said, if something happened to me, he goes, I think there would have been a riot.
But long before he signed legendary Chicano rap groups or worked with Latino artists, Eazy had tight relationships with the Mexican homies in his circle. One of his closest friends early on was a Mexican-American named Daman Trujillo, better known as Crazy D. If you look closely at the cover of NWA and the Posse, NWA's very first album, you'll notice something that threw fans off for years. Here's the thing, NWA stood for N with attitude, so when people saw the album cover, they couldn't help but wonder who the one person that obviously didn't fit the name was. At first, rumors started floating around that someone might have photoshopped themselves into the iconic picture, but if you go back and look up the real album cover, they're all the same. That man standing proudly in the photo is Crazy D. Crazy D wasn't just there for the picture, though. At that time, he was actually more involved with NWA than some of its core members, like MC Ren, who only ended up in the photo because he happened to be with his friends that day. Crazy D wasn't just part of the crew, he was contributing to their music too. In fact, he was credited on NWA's first single ever, Panic Zone, where he helped shape the sound they were building. In a way, Crazy D proves that Eazy's bond with the Mexican community was there from the very beginning. But Eazy's relationship with the Latino community didn't stop there. Years later, he would go on to cement that connection in a big way when he signed Brownside. Brownside, in particular, was something special. Under Eazy's guidance, they became pioneers of Chicano rap, laying down the blueprint for how the genre would sound and feel. But Brownside wasn't just another rap group trying to capitalize on a trend. These guys were real gangsters, straight out of the streets with stories to tell. Everything they rapped about was authentic. There were no exaggerations, no clout-chasing antics, just raw real-life experiences that reflected who they were.
Came up and started blasting 'cause I knew they couldn't fake it. And I'm straight gangry.
Brownside was also in the mix during the whole beef between Suge and Eazy, and they played a huge role in keeping Eazy safe during this time. According to Toker, he and the Brownside crew showed up at Ruthless Records right when things started getting heated between Eazy and Suge. Toker described it as almost fate, like destiny brought them there at just the right time. Toker said that during one of their conversations, they told Eazy straight up, "If there's anyone you want gone, just say the word." Eazy, being the kind of guy he was, tried to brush it off. He told them, "It's not like that, man," trying to downplay the situation. But Toker wasn't having it. He looked Eazy in the eye and said, "Nah, it's exactly like that."
Tony, we rolling with you, fool. We got your back. What's cracking with this death row roof? Who you want gone? Cause we ain't around.
Toker made it clear to Eazy that if he just mentioned a name, they'd handle it, and he wasn't bluffing. Toker said they had youngins, kids who were 15 or 16 years old that were more than ready to step up and do the job. In Toker's words, at most they'll let them out when they're 22, so you don't gotta worry about a thing. That's how serious they were.
15? Alright, don't worry about it, E. I'ma send my little young juvenile torpedo so they can go ahead and do YA life. They're gonna let my boys out when they're 22 years old. Don't worry about it.
After that conversation, things between Eazy and the Mexican community became even tighter. Eazy knew he had an army behind him. These guys were ready for whatever. They were hoping to run into anyone from Death Row Records so they could make a statement and prove to Eazy that they had his back till the very end. And one day, they got their chance. According to Toker, Eazy was chilling at a cheesecake factory when about 7 or 8 guys claiming to be affiliated with Death Row appeared. These guys surrounded Eazy, trying to intimidate him. These dudes were trying to flex their strength, maybe thinking they'd caught him alone and vulnerable.
And it was like 7, 8 playing death row, waiting for their cars to pull up because they were leaving the Cheesecake Factory. Right when my boy E walked past them, they all surrounded him. "What's up?" And they were saying the N-word on him.
But they didn't realize what they had walked into. Out of nowhere, the tables turned. Suddenly, the Death Row guys found themselves surrounded. And not just by a few people. Toker described it as feeling like they were at a Mexican soccer field. The entire place was filled with Mexican gang members who showed up to protect Eazy. These weren't random guys either. They were real gangsters, people who didn't play around.
And all of a sudden, them 7 looked around like, we're surrounded. They thought they were at a Mexican soccer field surrounded by Mexican soccer players, but it was us. I said, "What's up, man? You got beef with my brother Eazy?" They were like, "Oh, damn. Got beef with my little brother Eazy? You got beef with me?" And then my little homie started coming out with the heat. They were like, "No, man."
The Death Row affiliates were completely shook. The intimidation game flipped on them real quick, and they knew they were outnumbered. Without wasting any time, they scrambled out of there, jumping into their cars and speeding off like their lives depended on it. And just to send a message, Toker and the crew didn't let them leave quietly. Toker told them straight up, "In case y'all want to come back, you're more than welcome. We'll be right here waiting." This was a statement, one that made it loud and clear that Eazy, S.E., wasn't alone. And if anyone thought they could intimidate him, they'd have to deal with the Mexican gangs of Compton.